You think prayer is a plea. You picture destiny as fixed, and you approach it with requests. You try to bend what you assume cannot bend. Yet you also sense that this stance creates tension. You ask as if you were outside what acts. Abdul Al Qadar al-Jilani challenged this logic. He taught that prayer is not persuasion, but participation. He said the one who prays does not change the divine. The one who prays awakens to the divine movement already acting through them. If prayer is alignment with the order that is, then the question shifts. Are you trying to move fate from the outside, or are you discovering the current that has always carried you? And if alignment is the change, what is left to bend? You review your practice. You ask for outcomes, calculate timing, and measure results. When outcomes differ, you call the prayer unanswered. When outcomes match, you call it proof. But the pattern repeats, relief followed by new demands. You notice the same assumption beneath each request, separation. You speak as if two centers exist. Your will here, the divine will there. Abdul Al Qadar would call this the hidden conflict. He would ask whether the posture of demand sustains the distance you are trying to cross. If the act of asking arises from lack, does the asking preserve the lack? And if the asking arises from nearness, does it expose a unity you did not dare name? Abdul Al Qadar al-Jilani lived in 12th century Baghdad. Law, dialectic, and spiritual training shaped his method. He mastered juristic precision, then redirected it toward inward clarity. His discourses speak in simple claims and uncompromising logic. He calls prayer an act that reveals order, not a strategy that compels it. He warns against passivity and against control. He aims for a third stance, consent informed by understanding. Within this frame, destiny is not a script from the past, but a living decree in the present. If destiny is living, can change mean anything other than clearer participation? You decide, desire, and plan. That is one level. Abdul Al Qadar names it the apparent will. Beneath it, he places the real will, the divine intention that sustains both your choosing and its outcome. Conflict is the felt distance between these levels. Prayer is the meeting, not defeat, but recognition. You may still speak your preferences, but the speech changes function. It becomes disclosure of dependence rather than assertion of control. The two wills become legible in one movement. What you called mine shows itself as borrowed. What you called thine shows itself as immediate. If the apparent depends wholly on the real, then when you pray, who is actually asking and who is already answering? You notice how demand forms. It begins with fear of loss, then builds justification. You create terms. If this occurs, I will be safe. You attach prayer to those terms. The mind polices reality and calls this vigilance. Abdul Al Qadar names it subtle resistance. He observes that the lips may consent while the mind argues. This is the fatigue you carry. You stand inside the event and negotiate as if you stood apart from it. The self defends an image of control and calls it responsibility. But what if responsibility is not control? What if it is lucid consent to the order already at work? You test a different approach. You suspend negotiation and turn attention toward what does not depend on outcomes. The turning itself changes the field. You are not trying to convince. You are trying to see. Abdul Al Qadar describes this as the essence of prayer. The act is interior, a return from distraction to the one who sustains. Words may follow, but they now point to the turn instead of replacing it. The self bends. Destiny does not. The axis moves from demand to recognition. If the one you turn toward is never absent, does turning reveal something new or only remove what concealed it? Acceptance is often confused with passivity. You fear it will erase choice. Abdul Al Qadar reframes it as intelligent consent. He does not ask you to like every event. He asks you to see each event within wisdom. Acceptance is not an emotion. It is an understanding about authorship. It denies neither grief nor effort. It denies the claim of isolation. In acceptance, prayer loses the tone of bargaining and gains the clarity of listening. You are available to instruct. You can still act, but action stems from agreement rather than panic. If acceptance is lucid participation, then is it not already the change you sought by force? You reconsider the meaning of answered. You had equated answers with favorable outcomes. Abdul Al Qadar proposes another measure, depth of understanding. He says every sincere prayer is answered at the level it is prayed. A request for control draws lessons in surrender. A request for truth draws light upon assumptions. The form may disappoint the demand, but it completes the understanding. You begin to read responses not by shape, but by instruction. Your history changes meaning. The same events now tell a different story. If answers are scaled to awareness, then what you called delay may be precise timing, and what you called refusal may be refined mercy. Calm appears, not as feeling, but as structure. You notice the unity of action. The willing, the event, and the recognition form one movement. The question, can prayer bend destiny? Relaxes. If destiny is the living decree and prayer is lucid consent, bending is the wrong picture. Clarity replaces it. You can speak desires without fear. You can receive outcomes without despair. You are engaged, yet not divided. Abdul Al Qadar would call this the dignity of the servant. Not passive, not defiant, present. If prayer is presence, then where is the boundary between asking and hearing? You ask how to practice. The steps are plain. Begin with the turn. Withdraw attention from negotiation and face what is absolute. State your need honestly, but without threat. Add the question, what is this event asking me to understand? Wait within awareness, not expectation. Act on what becomes clear, however small. Review outcomes not for proof, but for instruction. When agitation returns, return to the turn. Abdul Al Qadar's method is not a technique, but a stance. It can accompany work, conversation, and decision. It rejects two extremes, fatalism and control. It chooses lucid consent. Over time, the same circumstances feel lighter, not because events change, but because authorship is recognized. If practice is this simple, is complexity anything more than delay? You return to the opening paradox. You asked whether prayer bends destiny. Abdul Al Qadar's teaching dissolves the question by dissolving the separation that formed it. Prayer is not a lever against a distant decree. Prayer is awareness consenting to the decree as it lives now. In that consent, the apparent will and the real will meet. Speech becomes listening. Asking becomes recognition. Action becomes agreement. What changes is not the divine, but your reading of the moment and your place within it. The bending occurs in the image of distance, not in destiny itself. You do not stand before fate. You stand within the one who ordains. Seeing clearly, prayer continues as presence. and presence is already the answer.